parents today are so invested in keeping their kids happy and comfortable out of a really good intention, of course, but we're lacking this understanding of what kids actually need, which is that authoritative type parenting where you have the high love and high support, but also high expectations and boundaries and firmness on the other side. And that lack of firmness is really causing anxiety and depression and so much in our kids because they're not moving past that discomfort.
Right.
From 3 to 5, kids should be learning how to be autonomous and independent. And so one of the things that they need to do is have experiences where they work through their frustration and they build that tolerance for things are hard, but I'm capable and I can do it. So we have so much separation anxiety or just overall generalized anxiety in our kids. And a lot of that is because parents aren't allowing their kids to have those independent moments. So when parents aren't around, the kids go into this internalized feeling of, oh no, mom and dad aren't there. I don't know how to do that.
Gosh, it makes so much sense. Welcome to Cake for Dinner. This is not your everyday mom podcast. We laugh, we curse, we tell the truth, and we're here to ditch the perfection culture. So today I'm joined by Nicole Runyon, psychotherapist, parent coach, and author of Free to Fly, who helps parents raise independent, resilient teens without over-accommodating anxiety. Nicole Runyon, welcome to Cake for Dinner.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So I guess I really do want to dive into your book, but I'm guessing you have some personal experience that probably led you to write the book. So maybe give me a little bit background on yourself and why you wrote the book.
Yeah. So I was a psychotherapist for children for 20 years. And over time, what I came to find out about kids today is that it's not so much the kids, pathologizing them, putting them in therapy, medicating them. But really a problem that I was noticing is more cultural and environmental was really troublesome for me. And it almost felt unethical to continue that work when I felt like the parents could have so much more control over their environment and change the trajectory of those mental health declining symptoms that we're seeing so much in this generation of kids. And I started noticing this in around 2014, 2015. Interestingly enough, right when in my community, the middle schools in particular, had started allowing the children to have their devices, their smart devices, all day.
Okay.
And, there was no really limits. They could be on social media. And I noticed the mental health decline almost immediately. There was just such a high correlation. What I was getting in my practice was an influx of adolescent girls who had just come out of the hospital after their first suicide attempt, self-harming, some eating disorder issues. And meanwhile, I'm looking at the families and they're intact. Parents are loving and supportive. In the therapy space with them, saying, what can I do to help? What is happening to my child? And so I thought, this is very odd. It was a very odd phenomenon that, mostly if I would see these symptoms, I would see them rooted in some kind of trauma, but that wasn't the case. And at the time, of course, now we know nobody was really talking about technology and how it might be affecting kids. There was really no concern. It was actually being celebrated. But I was a little bit more critical about it because I had felt like, well, this is really infiltrating development in a lot of ways. And I kind of started to do my own research and observe more of that in my practice. And so I started speaking about it. And people at the time were sort of interested, but we weren't ready to do anything about it. And then we had the lockdowns of 2020. And that put more kids on more tech for longer. And then, of course, more mental health decline. And so I thought, well, I really do need to make a change here. And so what I did was I wanted to address these issues with parents. And over time, what I had come to the realization is that it's not really the tech. I mean, yes, the tech is very much affecting their development and how they relate and how they connect or not connect with people. It's really more the parenting practices. I think parents today are so invested in keeping their kids happy and comfortable out of a really good intention, of course, but we're lacking this understanding of what kids actually need, which is that authoritative type parenting where you have the high love and high support, but also high expectations and boundaries and firmness on the other side. And that lack of firmness is really causing anxiety and depression and so much in our kids because they're not moving past that discomfort
Right.
to get to the other side of it to say, wow, like, look at me, I'm capable and resilient.
Yeah, I feel like also, yes, I think some parents don't know. But also, even when you do know, it's so difficult, I think, to implement. One of the things that you wrote, which really got me, was often the hardest parts of parenting isn't your child's discomfort, it's yours. And that really hit me because I'm a certified parenting coach. I have a master's in psychology. Like I'm in charge of an adolescent facility. One would assume I might have some answers, but when it comes to my own kids, that knowledge sometimes doesn't work, or it isn't in play because it's a struggle for me emotionally to implement the things. And I think you're right on point with it's hard for me to watch them struggle or to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I have had that experience as a parent as well. I have a
Mhm.
17-year-old and a 12-year-old. And I've had to push myself to be okay with their discomfort, whatever that is, whether that's a natural consequence out in the world
Mhm.
or that's a consequence my husband and I have had to impose on to
Did it
them.
come naturally for you, or has this work really shown you kind of how you're showing up as a parent?
Yes, it did not come naturally, because I think it's our instinct to want to make our kids happy, right, and comfortable and be okay.
Mhm.
And when we're having to be firm or allow for a natural consequence and not rescue them, that is not a natural parental experience. So, absolutely, through my work, I've had to push myself to be okay with it because I know it's for their own good.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, you thought it was more tech. So in your practice, you were kind of curious as to what is driving these issues. You took a hard look at technology and eventually came to the conclusion that you feel the majority of the issues lie in the parenting.
Yes. And the technology is just an easy modality for the parents to use to allow for this lack of discomfort. But
Hmm.
ultimately, it's the parents who are struggling with stepping into their own authority.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now you wrote this book.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about the premise of the book and, kind of how you're using that in your coaching.
Yeah. So the book is designed to help parents understand child development. So it goes through child development from birth to age 25. And I go as in depth as I possibly can for a 300-page book, right? And the entire book is not just specifically about child development, but that's the very beginning of it. Because I think it's important parents understand what their kids need and when they need it. So, for example, a 3-year-old should really be learning how to tie their shoes and zip up their coats and get themselves dressed. And I think parents today don't know that because that
Mm.
is not the norm. The norm is more we help them, we do it for them. We don't want them to get frustrated.
And what is that based on? So when you say a 3-year-old should be able to, what is that based on?
It's based on stages of psychosocial development. So I
Okay.
actually use Eric Erickson's framework, which
Yep.
is, very old theorist. If you're a psychologist,
Mhm, mhm.
and I've tweaked it a bit based on what I've observed as kind of a more modern take on it. But for the most part, from 3 to 5, kids should be learning how to be autonomous and independent. And so one of the things that they need to do is have experiences where they work through their frustration and they
Mhm.
build that tolerance for things are hard, but I'm capable and I can do it. And so a 3-year-old's going to struggle with tying their shoes because the bones in their hands don't fully fuse together until they're 6. So this is going to be a very hard fine motor task. But they
Mhm.
need that from a physical movement standpoint to build those bones together. They also need it on an emotional level where they can get to the other side of something hard. And if we do it for them or we rescue them, then we're really preventing them from feeling good out in the world. So we have so much separation anxiety or just overall generalized anxiety
Mhm.
in our kids. And a lot of that is because parents aren't allowing their kids to have those independent moments.
Mhm.
So when parents aren't around, the kids go into this internalized feeling of, oh no, mom and dad aren't there. I don't know how to
Right.
do this.
Gosh, it makes so much sense. I'm
Yeah.
questioning all of my parenting as you're talking.
Well, and me too. I have my kids are 5 years apart, so I always joke with my oldest, like, I'm so sorry I made all the mistakes on you,
Yeah.
because I've learned so much from even when he was 3 to then when his sister was 3.
I was
Yeah.
interviewing a woman yesterday, actually, who wrote a book, and we were talking about, not robbing your kids of the opportunities they need to grow. And that's so applicable here, right?
Yes.
So, and then, so give me a few other examples for aging and like stages that they should be at. So 3 years old, you should be able to, or at least learning how to tie
Learning.
your shoes.
Yes.
And I love that because I'm imagining myself watching my son at 3 years old not be able to tie his shoes and immediately just wanting to tie it for them. Not just because it's uncomfortable, but also timely.
Yeah.
I think that's another trap we're in,
Yes.
like do it for them because it's quicker. I mean, I had twins. I was a single mom, and I can remember like getting them in and out of the car and like all these like laborious tasks. And I would just do so much stuff for them just to get it done,
Yes, it's that convenience trap.
Yes.
Yes. And I think that it's easy to do that, right? But ultimately, we're preventing them from these experiences. So some of these other things that you're asking about, 9 years old is a really big one. It's considered to be the 9-year change.
Okay.
And this is based on Rudolf Steiner's stages of development. And he talks about how a 9-year-old is now developing a consciousness around themselves as an individual outside of the family. So what they need a lot of is independent tasks that make them feel good about being starting to separate from the family and essentially growing up, because there is this internal sort of crisis of, I don't want to grow up, because the magical thinking starts to end, or they start questioning, things like Santa Claus or
Sure.
fairy tales. And so ultimately, if we give them those independent tasks, like running errands, if they, have a bike and there's a store close by, they could go and run an errand, or learning how to cook and making dinner for the family. These are all things that can help resolve that crisis of, I'm afraid to grow up.
I wonder if my mind goes to like, it feels so independent that does that interrupt at all the emotional connection that you have with your child?
Actually, quite the opposite. So this is the premise of my book, is we need to understand our kids so we can maintain that connection, because the disconnect is really what's causing so much of these issues.
Explain that.
Because ultimately, when we understand them and we understand what they need, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard, we want to give that to them. Because then what we're saying is two things, really. I honor and respect that you're growing up and that you need me to be this, A, B, and C type parent for you. And it's also saying, I trust you. So then they ultimately can internalize, I trust myself.
Right. Because if you're doing everything, there is a part of you that's saying,
I don't trust you.
Right.
You can't do it. And they read that.
And then they don't trust themselves.
That's right.
Okay. So 9, what's another sort of?
16. That's a big one.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
Mine is 12. So I'm feeling,
Okay.
okay.
Then you're good.
So far I failed because 3 and 9, not happening.
Well, all can be undone.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yes. So 16 is really sort of the last age of this burst of independence.
Okay.
It actually starts at 2. So 2, 9, and 16.
Okay.
And so 2 is, you'll see a lot of kids, even strong-willed kids, saying, "Oh, do it by myself," or
Yes.
"No, I will not," or those types of things. And that is the.
And so that's great then in terms of
Yes.
what you're saying. So when they want to do it by themselves, you want to honor that.
Absolutely. And that's why it's considered to be the terrible twos, because so many parents don't want them to do it by themselves, or afraid, or
That's
think they can't.
wild, because we're just parenting against this theory.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So by the time they're 16, hopefully they've had some foundation for independence. If they haven't, it can absolutely be undone. I always tell parents, like, it's never too late. But 16 is a time when they're ready to separate almost permanently. And in our culture,
I feel so sad.
I know.
Listening to this.
It is so hard to separate. I struggle with it too. I get very, I get in denial actually. My husband's usually the one that has to remind me, oh, hey, you know what? I think they're more ready for this, this, and this.
He's like, look at this chapter you wrote.
Yes, you're right, exactly. But it is us, as a mother, it breaks your heart because ultimately you have to let them go. But yeah, this is sort of the last time they're saying, yeah, I'm ready. And culturally, they can't really be on their own, right? I mean, they can't make ends meet financially without some education or without some experience of, parents preparing them. But ultimately, this is why teenagers and parents struggle and have this conflict because they're saying, I don't need you anymore.
Right.
And they sort of still do, right? But from an emotional standpoint, they're ready. And so what we really want to do is respect and honor that they're ready by doing things like allowing them to drive. This is a big topic that I know in some states they don't allow them to drive at 16, totally understandable. But if they are eligible and they can drive, I think it's a very important rite of passage
Okay.
because it is the ultimate, I trust myself. You're operating this heavy machine that could kill you or somebody else. And ultimately, having that control over yourself and knowing that your parents trust you to have that control and then you trust yourself is a really important emotional developmental process that needs to happen. And so I don't mean they have to have their own car or they have to have even access to a car because I know that financially some people don't, and that's totally understandable. It's the idea that they can if they need to.
Okay.
So taking driver's training, getting that license, making sure that you have that is really important. And I notice a lot of 16-year-olds today either don't want to get their licenses or their parents aren't allowing them to.
Okay.
And the parents who aren't allowing them to are fearful, have that like fear of letting go and fear of, well, they're not ready. And many of them don't look ready because they didn't have those independent experiences before. And so my thing is get them ready by giving them more opportunities in life to simple things like if they forget their lunch at school, don't bring the lunch to them and rescue them from that.
I'm still failing.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I had a moment where my daughter forgot her water bottle, and I could very easily have driven back to the school. I was still in the car to give it to her, but I made myself not do it. And she never forgot her water bottle again after that.
Right.
And so, she got in the car, she was thirsty. She's like, oh, because my kids are a little bit spoiled. We have filtered water at home and they don't like they call it the school water, the drinking fountain.
They're not wrong.
Yeah, they're not wrong. It's got all the chemicals in it, right? But yeah, she never did it again. And so ultimately, we want to give them those experiences of knowing that they should make mistakes. They should fail. They should fall down. And they can get themselves back up and solve their problem, right? So like the school lunch, for example, they could solve that problem. They could get food from their friends. I'm sure their friends would have some pity on them, right? Or they might just be hungry. And that's okay too. They're not going to die, essentially. And so us parents really do need to allow for that so that they are ready at 16.
Is there any difference gender-wise for girls and boys?
Yes. I think, we know this, that boys mature slower than girls. And I think boys too aren't really getting what they need today. So girls, I think, are ultimately more successful with these independent tasks because the school setting or school environment tends to work for them better than boys. Boys need a lot of movement. They need a lot of physical play.
Yes.
And as we know, that's getting eroded in schools every day. Yeah.
Okay, and then what about how does this theory or idea apply to different kids with different behavior? So, how are you balancing discipline, consequences, kids that are either difficult or making poor choices with the freedom that they need to gain in order to sort of be independent?
Yeah. I think, ultimately everyone's different, right? And so we have to parent our kids differently. And some kids are going to respond well to this, and some kids are going to push back and resist it. Or they're not going to, if you allow for the independence, they're maybe a little scared themselves or they're prone to anxiety. And so what I like to tell parents is that uh, kids develop the way that they're going to develop, and you follow their lead. So if they're a little bit behind, they're a little bit slow to that developmental phase, that's okay, they'll get there. But that doesn't mean that you change your parenting or what you know to be true and right to what they need. And
Okay.
you just sort of be patient and wait for them.
How do you recommend parents navigate their own resistance to this? Because I think the idea of it sounds great, but being able to implement it and then navigate your own emotions around it, I would think would be difficult.
It is. And that's why the first chapter in my book, it's called The Mirror.
Mm.
And it's designed to help parents to see themselves as separate from their kids, because when we look at our kids, we're literally looking in the mirror. And a lot of times they look exactly like us too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard not to.
Mm-hmm.
And their behaviors or what they're giving to us is our own wounding reflected in
Yes.
them.
The first chapter in my book is about, it's called Baggage Claim.
Mhm.
And it's the same concept of like, you have to, everyone brings stuff to the parenting party, right? We don't show up empty handed.
Yeah.
My twins' father died of a drug overdose. So I naturally think, especially my unhealed single mom version of myself, I parented a little bit from that place.
Yeah.
I think of fear and probably guilt,
Yeah.
So I like that that's your first chapter, because I think without that piece, all of this would be very difficult.
Impossible.
Impossible.
Yes. It's so foundational
Mhm.
because they aren't us, right? I mean, I had a moment with a mom. It was transformational for her when she was talking about her adolescent daughter who was struggling to make friends. And I had seen it, from my perspective as more of she wasn't getting the independence and she was prone to anxiety because of that. And so she
Mhm.
didn't trust herself to reach out to friends. But the mom was feeling like it was like her situation where she had some trauma around friends that were not good for her, and just difficult situations as an adolescent girl.
So
And
what did
so
you advise in that scenario,
all
and
I
how
had
did
to
it
say,
go?
it was so interesting. All I had to say was, she's not you.
Mm.
And that the mother was like, it was like an epiphany for her. And it
Mhm.
changed everything, because then she could push her to do things that she wasn't pushing her to do. Like, for example, there was camp. Her class was going to camp. And the daughter wanted her mother to go with her, like be a chaperone.
How old is the daughter?
She was sixth grade. So she would have been 11 or 12.
Okay.
And the mom decided, okay, I'm not going to go with you. She sent her on her own, and she did great. She came home, she had made friends, she felt really good. And it was just because of that one statement that
Mhm.
she's not you, it changed everything for her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine so many moms struggle with that.
Yeah.
So what's the most common way you see parents overhelp?
I see parents doing too much for their kids. So
Okay.
those tasks of development, they're not being nurtured. They're being done for their kids, or they're being, squashed or quelled. And I think a lot of times parents let kids off the hook.
Mhm.
So maybe they do try to foster some of that independence and ask their kids to do chores and ask them to, do things for the family. And then the kids don't do that. And so ultimately, I think parents have a hard time with, how do I get them to do it?
Right, I
Right.
would think so. Where do you stand with consequences,
Yeah.
and how do you so you have a mom who totally buys into this,
Mhm.
but she's like, yeah, but my son isn't doing it and I've never done that, and my son is 13.
Yes.
So what are your
Well,
recommendations?
there's sort of two ways to go about that. One is sometimes there's going to be a natural consequence, right?
Mhm.
So if you don't want to rescue them from
Mhm.
forgetting things, for example, if they get a bad grade at school, you
Mhm.
don't want to be the one going to the teacher and saying, what happened, or why did my kid get the
Can
bad
they do
grade,
extra
right?
credit? Yeah.
Can they do extra credit? You want to be coaching them on the sidelines of what they can do.
Okay.
And kids need to know that they have a lot more power than they think. So if you go to a teacher and you say, I studied really hard for this test, I don't know what happened, I don't know why I didn't do well. What can I do? What should I do? What do I need to work on? Perhaps the teacher might offer extra credit because they respect and honor that the child was brave enough to go to them. And teachers want to know that you care,
Right.
right? So, helping your kid with these skills instead of rescuing them from it is really important.
Okay, and then what if they're not doing the things at home that you're trying to get them to do?
Yes. So, in that case, I like to help parents understand that there's a connection that needs to be built.
Mhm.
So kids need to know that their parents are asking them to do these things out of a respect for the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all live here, in terms of chores, and we all want to take care of each other, and we respect each other. And so we do these chores for each other because of that love and respect.
Okay.
And instead of the nagging or the, give me your phone or no video games this weekend. And I'm not saying that there's not a place sometimes for that, but we want our kids to understand that there needs to be a mutual respect. And like I've always told my kids as they've grown, you're not babies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a person too. And so I'm not just here to serve you. You need to, have that reciprocation.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's not going to be the same thing as a spouse or a friend. You're not going to
Sure.
expect them to be everything for you. But
Right.
you want to teach them that reciprocation because you're the template. You're the very first relationship they're ever going to have. And you're
Mm-hmm.
the template for that. And they need to know that when they enter into friendships or significant other romantic relationships, that it should be all about respect and connection.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I think sometimes moms take pride in doing it all.
Mhm.
It's like a way a little bit to maybe excuse your exhaustion or sort of explain away, how you're navigating life, or you hear moms talk. It's like this culture, it's a part of our culture, you know. I do everything, I'm in charge of everything. So I think um, in a weird way, it gives you value as a mom
Yes,
to
it's
know that
that.
you're the do all, responsible for everything and everybody's relying on you.
Yes, I fully agree. I think there's that mom is a superpower. I think it's because so many of us are working moms that we've
Yeah.
taken on this role of I do it all.
Wear all the hats.
That's right.
Right,
Yep.
right. What's the one thing parents should stop doing for their kids right now?
Mm. Well, I think that depends on the age.
Let's go with
So
teenagers.
teenagers. Um, Stop curating a perfect life for them. So if they make a mistake, if they fail, if they, are struggling with something, let them find the solution. So
I
in my
like
book,
that.
I have a framework for parents to help them with that. And ultimately, what we want to do is start with listening.
Hmm.
And that's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing for me to do, even though I'm a therapist, because immediately when they start talking, I think, well, I know how to solve your problem. I know what to do about that. But we
Right.
really just want to listen. And then we want to give them some sort of reflective validation. I understand how you feel. I've been there. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Hmm.
And then the next question is, what should you do about it? Now, it's not to say parents can't help, right? It can be what should you do about it and how can I help? But you can't come up with the solution and you can't do it for them.
Okay. So I take it back. Let's do a little bit of each age. So give me the what's one thing parents should stop doing for their kids now? And let's do 2, 9, 16, and then I guess adult children.
Yeah, adult children too.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that'd be
let's
great.
go with 2.
Okay, so two, stop getting in their way when they want to do something by themselves.
Okay.
So, of course, we have to worry about safety,
Sure.
But if it's something like they want to get themselves dressed, or a lot of kids, if parents do a lot of cooking, they want to be in the kitchen with their parents and on a step stool and
Mhm.
helping. And that's going to be harder. They're going to make a mess and
And
it's
it's
going
gonna
to take you
require a lot of
a lot
patience.
of patience and a lot more time to make your meal than you expected. But that do it by myself is a developmental task that they need to experience.
And maybe it would be good for parents with 2-year-olds to sort of remember that although it would require more patience and energy now, later you're going to certainly have a kid that's more self-sufficient.
Absolutely. Yes. Both of my kids were on stools in the kitchen at that age, and they both can cook a meal from start to finish by themselves.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And at two, kids also need their parents' boundary. So it's no, I will not, and do it by myself. And the no, I will not is, really out of a desire to tell their parents, hey, I don't need you right now,
Mhm.
right? I don't need you to tell me what to do. And of course, we do still need to tell our 2-year-olds what to do
Sure.
most of the time for their safety
Mhm.
because they're a threat to themselves
Right.
often, right? And so, two things are happening. It's respecting and honoring their boundary to do it by themselves, but it's also teaching them to respect and honor your boundary as the parent.
Mm.
And so it really teaches them authority in that way. And I think a lot of parents are afraid of their 2-year-olds because they're afraid of the meltdown or, the big explosive reaction.
It's interesting. It's like no matter what the age is, we as the parents are afraid of the same thing.
Yeah.
Like
The discomfort.
their discomfort, their reaction.
Yes.
Okay, so we move into 9.
Yes.
What should parents stop doing now?
Stop hovering
Mhm.
and have higher expectations for their independence. They can do a lot more at that age than you think they can. So, like I said, send them on their bike to run an errand, send them to their friend's house to ask if they can play instead of organizing the
For
play
them.
for them. One of the other things parents of 9-year-olds can do is help them learn how to express and communicate their feelings. Because of that consciousness around themselves outside of the family,
Mhm.
they start to connect more with big feelings because their feelings become really big feelings,
Mhm.
and parents often get worried that something's wrong.
When would you say a child should be waking up to the alarm themselves and like getting up in the morning, getting themselves ready,
That is like,
asking for a friend?
yes, that's 9 and 10 years old.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think, so we've covered a lot in this area. I do not want to neglect what you brought up in the beginning, which is the technology.
hmm
Where do you stand on that? How much access should kids have to technology? What ages? Like, what's your general thought around technology?
Yeah. So essentially, technology is infiltrating all that development.
Hmm.
So we don't really want to be giving 2 and 3-year-olds iPads. And I know that that's commonplace now. It's also because, again, we don't want the meltdown. We want them
Mhm.
to be calm. We want our convenience to be, if we want to take them to a restaurant or something, we want them to be quiet. They need movement, a lot of movement. They need outdoor play. They need to develop those physical, gross motor, fine motor skills. And if
Mhm.
they're on an iPad, that's not going to happen. So I actually don't think there should be any technology under 5.
Okay.
If, can be in the form of a family movie night where it's centrally located, the family's together, the parents are involved in the content that the child is watching,
Mhm.
because it's not just what they're not doing in the real world when they're on the tech, but it's also what
Sure.
are they
What they're
being exposed
consuming.
to. And so between 5 and 9, I recommend that parents supervise if there's going to be any tech usage. So, and that should really be in the form of a tutorial if they want to learn how to draw something,
Mhm.
something that's going to enhance and benefit them, not just, blindly watching YouTube or mindlessly scrolling or something. Between 9 and 12, I do like that now a lot of these tech companies are creating safe tech for kids.
Yep.
So there's Gab and there's Gizmo and there's all these companies that make watches. So it's a great time for your kid to have that independence out in the world, but stay in touch with you.
Mhm.
And you control the contacts, and it's all just talk and text, and there's no internet or social media. And I think it's a good way to stay connected because we don't have payphones anymore.
Yeah.
You and I were calling our parents from the payphone when we were out and about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're anti-video game?
Um, I would say yes, under a certain age. So under 14,
Mhm.
because the younger that you introduce something addictive, and we know video games are very addictive, the younger that exposure is, the more likely the child is to be addicted later on. So we really want to wait till their brains are more developed, till they can understand more and
Mhm.
connect more with what the game might be doing to them.
And when you say they're more likely to be addicted later on, do you mean to other things or to the game?
Well, to the game or other things in
Got it.
general, because it's wiring the brain for addiction.
Sure.
And I happen to think gaming at that young age is sort of the gateway into other substance use later on
Wow.
because of that brain wiring that happens so
Mhm.
early on.
Okay. And then later.
So I know the conversation mainly is around smartphones at 14. I think from Jonathan Haidt's book, we have these
Yeah.
recommendations now, and social media at 16. I think that's reasonable. I do think that some kids aren't even ready at 14 though. And I've heard parents say that. So they've sign that wait till eighth pledge. I don't know if
Yes.
you've heard of that. That's,
Yes.
that you sign the pledge with your class or your friends and everybody
I like
agrees.
that concept that everybody works together.
Yes.
That's one thing. I have 19-year-old twins that I tried really hard to do with their friends' parents
Mm-hmm.
because you're just going to have more success. Whether that is like, I can remember they all wanted to start going to the mall and it was like too early for the mall. So it was like, hey, let's all agree that they can go to the mall next year. And
Yep.
it's probably a cop out parenting because, it's a little bit easier, but it also, they get to stay a part of the group and everybody's sort of looking forward to the same thing. So I like that idea for the phone as well.
I do too. And it does speak to that whole idea of the village raises
Sure.
the child in the community. And we all do want to be connected and
Mhm.
aligned on that. For the kids, I think that's
Although
important.
8th grade getting a phone, I mean, you're going to be, that's tough. I mean, my son is in 6th grade and there's only one other, what's a set of twins that I know of that don't have a phone yet. So
Yes.
he will eventually be the last man standing.
Absolutely. And I've heard even parents say, and I feel this way too with my eldest too, when he was in 8th grade, he was not ready. So many parents say, well, we made the pledge, but now we're still not ready to give them the
Mhm.
phone. And so I do think each individual kid is going to be different. And if you feel like your kid still isn't ready at 13 or 14, then wait as long as possible because we really want to see from them some maturity and some ability to trust themselves and do these independent tests that we talked about and feel good about themselves before we introduce this.
One of the things I did with my daughter with the cell phone was, she had the phone. I don't know, she was probably like, they got it in 7th grade, but in 8th grade, girls are very tough.
Mhm.
And, I would notice, different things because I would always read their text. And I would tell her that the phone is a privilege and that you have to be mature enough to have it. So if I feel that I'm reading things that indicate to me that you're not mature enough, then you can't have it. So let's work together. These are the things that you need to work on. And we started working on that really young. I mean, it took time. I think the young girl culture, the adolescent female culture is really tough, just
It's
in
tough.
general,
Yes.
And so what about parents who are listening and they're thinking similar to what I'm thinking, holy shit, I've, I've done quite a few things wrong.
But you just did
How
something
do,
right. So that was
yeah,
great.
okay, well, that's a little A for me.
There you go.
How can they sort of get back on course, or what are like maybe 2 things that are practical that they can implement in their homes today to feel like they're sort of moving in this direction?
It's all about the connection. So something as simple as everybody, including the parents, because the parents have this problem too, put the devices down, take
Mhm.
some time together. And I know that families don't have a lot of time together today, right? We're so busy. Mothers on average spend 120 minutes with their kids a day, and fathers even less at 85 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So, in those small frames of time, put those devices down and be together. Whether that's we have to make dinner and we don't have time to be together, make dinner together.
Okay.
Go to the store together, run an errand together. I was on a panel for high school recently, and part of the panel discussion was from the teenagers, from the high schoolers. And one of the girls said that one day her dad asked her to go for a walk. And of course, she was scrolling on her phone. She didn't want to go. And she said no. And he said, no, put your phone down. You're coming on this walk. And she begrudgingly, went on the walk with him.
Mhm.
And she talked about how grateful she was that
Mm.
he made her do that. Something as simple as going for a walk together.
Yeah, that makes me think of, I actually was with my nephews. This was a few years ago, and I was asking them about video games and, when were they allowed to play video games? And one of them said, my mom didn't let us have much technology when we were younger, and now I'm so grateful for that.
Yes.
And he was older at the time. So, for parents, I think that are having a hard time with it, I think it's just about, you know, letting the kids be unhappy sometimes,
Mhm.
right? Letting them struggle. We're going to struggle. I am knee deep in this right now. My kids are 19. My older son is in a sober living, so I've had to watch him struggle with addiction and some big things. And so I sort of think had I done a lot of this earlier, it just preps you for the bigger things, right? Letting your 2-year-old do it themselves is really setting you up to parent adult kids.
Yes.
So for any parents out there who haven't got on board yet, you're suggesting that it is the connection is the most important thing, and that we can all start today.
Absolutely. Yes. Because the things of what do you do, or my kid is struggling with this particular issue and how do I deal with that? The foundation of that is connection.
Right.
Mhm.
So if people want to hear more from you, learn more about you, read your book, where can they find you?
My website is NicoleRunyon.com. I'm on Instagram at iGeneration Mental Health.
Mhm.
I'm active on LinkedIn as Nicole Runyon. And my book is sold anywhere online where you can buy books.
Wonderful. And if you haven't downloaded Cake for Dinner podcast, please do so. And I will also in the show links link everything, Nicole Runyon. And thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. This was lovely. It was enjoyable to be here.
Awesome.